The Weeknd just launched his first NFT release. So NFTs, let's talk about it. Roll the intro. Now, NFT art has really boomed in the past couple of weeks. But what exactly is NFT? And why are people paying through the roof for it? NFT is being heavily endorsed by the likes of Gary Vee and Logan Paul. A couple of weeks ago, Artist People sold this piece for a whopping $69 million. His commission alone was 10% of that. But what exactly is NFT? And why are people paying so much for something as simple as this? NFT stands for non-fungible tokens.
Fungible? Is that a brownie from Theobroma?
No, it's not a brownie from Theobroma. What are you talking about? Never mind. NFT stands for non-fungible tokens.
So what does fungible mean? Let's say I have these coins amounting to 10 rupees. I could essentially replace all of these coins with a 10 rupee note, and the underlying value of the currency will remain exactly the same. That is fungibility. Replaceability, if you will, if that's even a word. I can't do that with other documents like your Aadhaar card or certificates like birth certificates, or more importantly, participation certificates, like this very original one back from my college days. You can't replace yours with mine, and that is non-fungibility.
So non-fungible tokens are essentially tokens that cannot be replaced for one another. So in theory, two tokens which could be the same thing, let's say same picture or same video, can potentially be of different values because, well, they're different tokens. Now, to someone like me who has just come across this and wants to jump on the bandwagon of NFTs and crypto art, it's first important to understand what cryptocurrency is and consequently the blockchain before you jump into something like crypto art. This is not a for dummies channel, so I'll quickly try and wrap it up for you. Blockchain is, well, a chain of blocks.
Wow.
It's essentially this new way that is going to radically change the way we ledgerize things. Whenever you do a bank transaction, say from Yes Bank to ICICI Bank, there's an entry that's made in the ledger of both the banks. Now, this process happens for pretty much anything that needs proper documentation. Now, the problem with this process is essentially twofold. One, it is centralized. Essentially, the bank or the authority overlooking all of these transactions is the only one having copies or these ledgers for all of these entries. That brings me to point number two. These ledgers are easy to tamper with since they're only a single copy. So essentially, if I were to change something in that one single copy, I wouldn't have anything else to validate it with. Now, here is where blockchain comes in. Using peer-to-peer validated blocks that legitimize all entries in our proverbial ledger, and using cryptography to encrypt all of those blocks and the entries, it becomes extremely secure and decentralized.
In a normal ledger, each entry is a single line, as in whatever you bought or sold, it gets added to the next line. But you can always just erase a line if you made a mistake, or if you want to fudge things up. So in theory, you could change each line of the ledger and make it into whatever you want it to be, because there's nothing else to validate it with. That's something you can't do in the blockchain. Each entry, even if it's a revision to a pre-existing entry, will be counted anew. So if in a paper ledger you'd correct your mistake by replacing, say, 2 plus 3 plus 4 by 2 plus 3 plus 3, in the blockchain you'd have to do 2 plus 3 plus 4 minus 1, because each block is essentially immutable after it's created.
What that means is each new addition to the blockchain or each transaction that is created on the blockchain would have to be validated by every single block in the chain. That's the entire concept of decentralization. It's kind of like group ownership. Now, I have a lot of questions. Does each node have to be my computer on my phone? Does each node need to have enough memory? How does the processing work? Blah, blah, blah. But point is, blockchain is as revolutionary as the internet itself, or so I'm told at least. But we still haven't gotten to the crypto art part and why the pixelated version of Phineas and Ferb is going for thousands of dollars. Now, for the past week, I've been going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole that is crypto art and art in general. You see, art evaluations are something of a black box.
Ladies and gentlemen, we move to the Leonardo da Vinci, the Salvator Mundi, the masterpiece by Leonardo, Christ the Saviour.
It makes no sense to me why someone would pay so much money for what seems to be a bunch of smudges on canvas.
Previous in the collections of three kings of England. At 90 million.
The psychology of art evaluations is based on two things. One, the inherent value perception, and two, the hype. I add perception to value perception not just to sound cool, but also because art is subjective. The value of a piece is, well, in the collector's eyes and also the depth of their pockets. There have been countless artworks that have gained mainstream attraction years after the artist has died. Now, the only change that rationally makes sense that would have happened in those years is the perception of people for that art piece. And ironically, having it to be old and somehow matured is like an added bonus. But my point is, art is subjective and very, very volatile. Since it's an unregulated market, there's no way of knowing if a non-universally accepted piece of art is actually valuable or not. This very subjectivity seems to pique the interest of rich people. And sometimes it just seems like an ego war. But the point is the hype. The fact that someone is willing to pay so much for a piece of canvas attracts a lot of attention. And that attention in turn fuels the fire and keeps the cycle going. But the idea of buying and selling things in crypto, it's not just happening for art, but for other things as well, like The Weeknd's music or Jack Dorsey's first tweet that he sold recently. Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, recently sold his first tweet as an NFT for an insane $2.9 million. Now, this idea of trading has even boiled over to other concepts, like something called a moment. A moment is essentially a small clip, a video of a couple of seconds. The same ones that you ravage through on Instagram or TikTok. Recently, a website called Top Shot started selling videos of NBA highlights as NFTs for what can only be called as an absurd amount of money.
The same clip of Steph Curry, the 2014 unanimous MVP, can go for $6,000 and $11,000. It's the exact same clip, but the difference is that the clips come from different sets, one of them being a base set and the other being a rare set. And that difference by itself almost doubles the price of the clip. The base set has a total of 1,000 clips released in that edition, while the rare set only has 211. And that's what's supposed to explain the price gap.
It's kind of like how Rolexes can be worth more if the serial number of the Rolex matches the year it was manufactured in. But the thing with Rolexes, or pretty much anything else that is resold in the real world, is that it has some intrinsic value. What that means is, if you take the Rolex and you remove all of its surrounding qualities, the watch itself is a piece of work. It's a machine that can only be made by very few people. It has some inherent value. Now, that cannot be said for NFTs or moments. These are just pictures or videos that you can pretty much find on Instagram or even YouTube. More importantly, all of those qualities of a Rolex are universally accepted. But the same cannot be said for NFTs, because right now, being in an unregulated market, everything in NFT is new. The concept of art auctions or retail is based on one thing: scarcity. Sure, the art speaks to you when it's done by Picasso Chacha or Da Vinci Uncle, but it won't be worth anything if we have too many Picassos or Da Vincis in the world. The same cannot be said for NFT, because essentially if I take Beeple's NFT that was sold for $6.6 million, I can get the same with a single screenshot, which is undermine the entire concept of scarcity. To me, the only common denominator among Top Shot moments or trading cards or NFT music or crypto art is the fact that they all leverage the concept of NFT and crypto as the foundation of the movement. That fact is more valuable than the NFT art or music itself. The idea that NFT and blockchain is being hailed as the next generation of bookkeeping, which is essentially foolproof, is actually the cause behind those absurd evaluations. So basically, the insane price tags is not for the art itself, but for the underlying mode, which is NFT and blockchain. But the frenzy is into the story of NFT, its potential, and what it means for the future. Sure, it's a bubble, and when it bursts, it will level the playing field for the people and institutions that truly understand the value of this concept. What do you think? Is crypto a bubble, or is it a real investment opportunity? Comment down below. Now, this brings me back to my other question. How does it really work? Does each node in the network need to have massive memory? What about the carbon footprint? What's Bitcoin mining? What's Dogecoin and all the other cryptocurrencies out there? Can you use NFT art to launder money? And how can we rely on unregulated currencies? If you'd like me to make a part 2 answering all of those questions, or if you'd like me to have a podcast episode with a blockchain expert, just comment down below and let me know. Thank you so much for watching Samosa Samosa. Like or dislike, share and subscribe. Tweet me at Gyan Center, and I'll see you in the next one.